Let's rewind the clock to the early 90s. The Berlin Wall had just come down. Grunge music was taking over the radio. And over in Munich, BMW engineers were sweating bullets. They had the impossible task of replacing the E30. The E30 was loved. It was iconic. It was the yuppie dream car. How do you follow that? Enter the E36, the third generation of the 3 Series. When it launched, it did not just evolve the design, it completely revolutionized it. They called it the dolphin shape. Gone were the upright, boxy lines and the round seal beam headlights of the 80s. In came aerodynamic glass covers for the headlights, a wedge-shaped profile, and a rear end that sat high. At the time, purists screamed. They said it was too big, too heavy, too plastic. But looking back now, we can see it was the bridge that took BMW from being a niche manufacturer of sporty sedans to a global luxury powerhouse. The design came from the team led by Pinky Lai and Boyk Boyer. They wanted a car that cut through the air. The drag coefficient dropped significantly compared to the E30, which meant better fuel economy and less wind noise at the high speeds of the Autobahn. But the real revolution wasn't the bodywork, it was underneath. This was the debut of the Z-axle, or the central link, rear suspension. This was a multi-link setup that was light years ahead of the semi-trailing arms used on the E30. The old E30 was famous for snap oversteer. You lift off the throttle mid-corner, and the back end tries to kill you. The E36 with the Z-axle was planted. It had passive rear steering built into the geometry. It gripped. It allowed regular drivers to feel like heroes. The lineup started arriving around 1990 and 1991 in Europe, and a bit later in North America. We had everything from the humble 316i all the way up to the Big Daddy. The engines were a mix of carryovers and new tech. The M50 engine was the star here. It was a 24-valve, double overhead cam inline 6 that was silky smooth. In 1992, they introduced Vanos on the intake cam. This is BMW's variable valve timing. It adjusted the timing of the valves based on RPM and throttle load. What did that mean for you? It meant you had torque down low at stoplights, but the engine could still breathe and scream at high RPMs. It gave the car a dual personality. Then came 1996 and the facelift. The kidney grills got wider, the side indicators changed, and we got the M52 engine, which used an aluminum block in many markets to save weight over the cast iron M50. But we have to talk about the M3. The E36 M3 is arguably one of the most controversial cars in BMW history, specifically if you live in North America. In Europe, the M3 launched with the S50 V30 engine, putting out 286 horsepower. It had individual throttle bodies. It was a race engine for the road. Later, the European model got the 3.2-liter engine pushing 321 horsepower. But in the US, we got a pumped-up 325i. The US-spec M3 had a single throttle body and made 240 horsepower. Enthusiasts were furious. They called it a neutered M3. But here is the plot twist. The US M3 was actually a better street car. It had more torque lower down, it was less finicky, and it was cheaper to maintain. It sold in huge numbers, and arguably saved the M division in America. The E36 was also the chassis that spawned the wildest variety of body styles. You had the sedan, the coupe, the convertible, the touring station wagon, which sadly we never got in the States, and the compact. The compact was the hatchback with the chopped-off tail. It actually used the older E30 rear suspension to save space and money, making it a weird Frankenstein car, but today, people love swapping big engines into them because they are so light. We also have to mention the M3 Lightweight, that white car with the checkered flag decal on the hood. Paul Walker made that car famous, and now they trade for astronomical money. The production run ended for the sedan in '98, and the coupe and convertible lingered on until '99 to make way for the E46. For a long time, the E36 was the unloved middle child. It wasn't as classic as the E30, and it wasn't as modern or well-built as the E46. It was the cheap way to get a BMW badge. But that narrative has shifted. Now, we appreciate the E36 for what it is. It is the last analog 3 series. It had very little electronic intervention. No traction control on the early models, a mechanical throttle cable on most, and a hydraulic connection to the road that modern electric steering systems just cannot replicate. It represents a time when BMW was focused purely on the driving dynamics first, and cup holders second. In fact, if you own one, you know the cup holders are useless anyway. Today, seeing a clean, stock E36 driving down the road turns more heads than a brand new M4. It has aged like fine wine. It reminds us of an era when cars were smaller, visibility was better because the pillars were thin, and the sound of a naturally aspirated inline-six was the only soundtrack you needed. From a controversial launch to a drift missile, and now to a rising modern classic, the history of the E36 is a testament to how good engineering stands the test of time.